It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, and a special bonus episode this morning at Star Wars: A Celebration in Europe. The big Lucasfilm panel took place, and I have a ton of details to share, not only about the upcoming Disney Plus live-action shows, but the announcement of 3 films in the works, including one that I called on last week's episode. Really excited to bring you this bonus episode of a Star Wars show here on My Nerd World. And as always, head on over to mynerdworld.net and support My Nerd World by picking up your preferred copy of the EMBARK science fiction space opera series, also available on on.com.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now, you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, and welcome to it, a Star Wars show. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Really excited to bring you the details of what was revealed this morning at Celebration in Europe. As always, if you want to leave a comment at any point throughout the show, if you're listening and watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment there or email me, Justice. No, that's all right. That's my radio email address. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. So we have the reveal and the details, official information of 3 theatrical releases in the works. One of which I'm excited for all 3, but one of which I am most excited for, and I even predicted on an episode, I think a week or 2 weeks ago. I have some Mandalorian spoilers for you for next week's episode. Now, I'm going to hold that off until the very, very end. For those that don't want to be spoiled, they did show the first 7 minutes of next week's episode, the second to last episode in the series, and some pretty exciting details are coming out of it, which is good news in the wake of this week's episode, as I covered on the podcast yesterday, which I was rather disappointed about, to be honest with you. Or it was 2 days ago. Anyways, however, we do have spoilers for The Mandalorian for next week. So again, I'll give you plenty of warning before I get to that for those that just want to wait the next, 5 days to see for yourself. So, what I'll do is I'll start off with the live action news and the trailers that were revealed, of which I've seen footage for all of them, even though only one was released officially. And then we will get into the movie news, which I am most excited about.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
So when they started off the Lucasfilm panel, they first introduced the cast and discussed Andor Season 2 and the final season of Andor leading into Rogue One. I've pulled some tweets from various sources online that I'll share with you, plus I'll share with you what I saw. The tweet that I have here from Empire Magazine, we just saw Andor Season 2 trailer. All our favorite characters are back. There's an escalation among the rebels. The Empire is catching on with plenty of war to come. One of the quotes from a desperate Mon Mothma says, "If we do not stand together, we will be crushed." Looks huge. And it did based off of the footage. I mean, it looked like what Season 1 looked like, which I enjoyed, and I've started a rewatch on, and I've talked extensively about Andor on the show. I think it's a great series. It doesn't have enough Star Wars in it for me to put it in my category of rewatchable. I am rewatching it now and enjoying it. That being said, I'm watching it while I'm doing other things. I think it was an expertly crafted show, one of the best written Star Wars shows. Personally, for me, I just would prefer a little bit more of that Star Wars fun energy that comes with the projects. And we all have things that we like more in Star Wars, and it's all subjective. But Season 2, I expect that they're going to be ramping up a lot of that, especially with it heading into Rogue One. And I think that Andor is also going to be somewhat of a roadmap for how they will be handling these theatrical releases. I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to that portion of the show. Next up was The Acolyte. Empire Magazine tweeted out, "The Acolyte footage just played, and it looks incredible. Jedi everywhere, lightsabers galore, a darker epic Andor tone. We saw Padawans, plenty of aliens, and a jaw-dropping martial arts force fight between Carrie Ann Moss and Amanda Steinberg's characters." Leslie Headland, the writer and showrunner for The Acolyte, said it was pitched as Frozen meets Kill Bill. And from what I've seen of the footage, I agree with the description here from Empire Magazine. It looks on par with what Andor looked like. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of that's kind of how both, well, actually all three. So Andor, The Acolyte, and Skeleton Crew, from the footage that I have seen that leaked out of Celebration, it all has that very same look in terms of the way it was shot, which I like. There's a level of consistency. Ahsoka was falling more in lines in the footage, and the official trailer that was released today, which I'll talk about here in a moment, was also falling more in line with what we're used to seeing in The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and to a lesser extent, Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, as I've said, I think is the worst in terms of production, like the worst in terms of production live-action content that they've put out yet. But The Acolyte and the Skeleton Crew, in the way that they are filming these, there's a level of consistency in the look. It seems as if they found a groove and they're sticking with it. The series is set before the events of the prequel era and just after the events of the High Republic, of which we have a host of books. There's a whole publishing initiative behind the High Republic, which I have not personally read. As it relates to Leslie Headland, the writer, saying pitched as Frozen meets Kill Bill, I do know from some spoilers, and this isn't huge spoilers, but given what she's written here, I'm extrapolating from that as well. Sisters being involved, relatives being involved, one of them being stronger in the Force, turning to the dark side, and a bit of a revenge tome taking place. It looks good. This is one that I've been looking for. According to Leslie Headland, she said this is a time when the bad guys are in the minority and how they end up getting to the point where they infiltrate the Republic in the prequel series. And so this is a show that I have been excited since it was announced many years ago, and it looks like it will be coming sometime mid next year. Next, they gave us Skeleton Crew and footage of Skeleton Crew. This is in the era of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. Empire Magazine again tweeted, Skeleton Crew trailer is playing. It looks like a blast. Stand By Me meets The Goonies meets Star Wars. Don't you ever want to do anything exciting? We hear one of the kids say in the voiceover. There looks to be a Star Wars school and suburbs, pirates, X-Wings. Jude Law's character is a Jedi hiding out. Kathleen Kennedy from Lucasfilm compares the Skeleton Crew to classic Amblin Tales. It's about kids, but not necessarily a kids' show. And there were the directors for the season, including Bryce Dallas Howard of Mandalorian fame, and Lee Isaac Chung, who also did a Mandalorian episode. The show is currently in post-production, and I'm not sure on the release of the Skeleton Crew. I think we might be getting it at the end of this year. Ahsoka's coming in August, so we might be getting Skeleton Crew at the end of this year, maybe next year. And then the big trailer, and the trailer was also released, and so if you haven't gone and watched it yet, I would definitely encourage you to go and do so. But Ahsoka, which is coming this August, they did release the trailer officially. Some of the exciting notes from the trailer and the reveals was, as speculated on this show, Hera Syndulla, my favorite character from the Rebels animated series, is being played in live action by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I used an image of her as Hera in the image for the podcast this week, if you happen to be on YouTube. For those that are not familiar with her by name, Live Free and Die Hard, she played the daughter to Bruce Willis, to John McClane. Scott Pilgrim, 10 Cloverfield Lane. She was also in the last Harley Quinn movie, and she's married to Ewan McGregor. I was a little bit leery about her playing Hera, but again, it's just because I'm such a huge fan of Hera from the Rebels series. But seeing her in the brief footage that we did in the Ahsoka trailer, and then seeing the image of her, knowing how she's kind of come into prominence as an action star. She starred in an action movie on Netflix that I quite enjoyed as well. I think this was a wise choice to play Hera. The trailer in and of itself looks fantastic. I know quite a bit about Ahsoka. I'm not going to reveal any spoilers here, except to say that in the trailer you do see some dark side force wielders. These are not Sith. The individuals you see, the bad guys you see in the trailer, are fallen Jedi. You also see the character that Ahsoka faced off against in Mandalorian Season 2 in her premiere episode in Season 2. She's actually a Night Sister. Ahsoka is essentially the continuation of Rebels that we've all been wanting. Sabine looks fantastic in the trailer. We actually see a live-action recreation of, I believe, the last scene that we saw at the end of the Rebels series, although they changed it a bit because her hair was long. So I guess we're doing some live-action, what is the word that I'm retconning? We're doing some live-action retconning of Sabine's hair, apparently. Assuming those shots were from the same moment, and then anything's possible. Things could change. But this is the search for Ezra, involving Thrawn as well. Now, in the trailer, you did see Thrawn from the back of his head. And this has been rumored for a while and is going to play heavily into what I'll talk about next, and that is the announcement of the 3 theatrical films that are being worked on currently. Listen, all in all, while I've been critical of Star Wars over the past couple of weeks and concerned about the future of the intellectual property, the IP, just as a lifelong Star Wars fan, I'm excited about these shows. I'm hoping that they are handling the content appropriately. I'm hoping that we're not going to see an injection of just so many of the controversial issues that are plaguing the country right now, and that we're just going to see some straightforward storytelling without any agenda involved. Star Wars has done a decent job of avoiding that for the most part. I'm not thrilled with what's happened in portions of The Mandalorian, specifically this past week's episode. The attempt to try to bring in individuals by sticking in cameos by people they don't need to do that. Star Wars can be on its own, and it thrives on seeing new faces, not just new creatures and new spaceships as well. So I hope that with the return of Bob Iger to Disney, that we can expect the kind of quality that we've come to expect throughout the decades from Star Wars content. Although, from what I've been hearing as of late, just as a side note, apparently Lucasfilm really handles these shows by themselves with very little Disney direction. I have a little hard time believing that, and I just imagine that Kathleen Kennedy and her relationship with Bob Iger or the other powers that be at Disney is probably the go-between that's kind of funneling through suggestions for shows. Be that as it may, I'm excited by everything that I've seen, and especially the one that we'll all be watching the soonest, and that would be Ahsoka coming up in August. The trailer looks fantastic, and with what we know now of what's happening on the theatrical front, it has me really excited. So with that, let's go ahead and get to the big news for me and this Star Wars fan, and that is the announcement of 3 movies, including one that I predicted was going to happen.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
So during the presentation, they rolled out a new complete timeline in which it's bookended by Dawn of the Jedi and the New Jedi Order. This would be happening before the High Republic era in Dawn of the Jedi, and then we have the New Jedi Order, which is coming after what we saw take place in The Rise of Skywalker and The Rise of the First Order. We've got James Mangold. We'll get to the headline portion of it and then dive into some details. James Mangold of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and probably most recently Ford versus Ferrari, which I'm really excited about. His movie will be telling the tale of the first Jedi. Dave Filoni is doing the Imperial Remnant versus the New Republic story. I'm excited for all 3 of these, but specifically Dave Filoni. And then the director, Miss Marvel's Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, is doing a New Jedi Order film set 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker that will be starring one Daisy Ridley. I called it. I said that was going to happen, and that's what's happening.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Or is it? All right, I'll share with you the details, and then I'll fill in some of the blanks here from Bespin Bulletin. Lucasfilm ended the Star Wars segment with a bang by officially announcing not 1, not 2, but 3 brand new films. One, of course, is helmed by Miss Marvel's Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, which has been reported by various outlets for more than 6 months and has already been in pre-production for a while. In addition to Obaid-Chinoy, Kathleen Kennedy brought none other than Dave Filoni onto the stage and Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny director James Mangold, confirming that Mangold and Filoni will also be helming individual Star Wars movies. Now, James Mangold is interesting because he was rumored years ago to be directing a Boba Fett film. They clearly are happy with the work that he's done on Indiana Jones to be given his own movie. Now, all of this is subject to change. I think the one film that I am most confident is going to get made is the Daisy Ridley post The Rise of Skywalker, a New Jedi Order film. And probably Dave Filoni's because he is so ingrained into Star Wars. The James Mangold one, I'll give it a 75% chance. They announced it at Star Wars Celebration. That seems to raise its possibility more so than what we've seen in the past with the other films that have been announced and then fall by the wayside, which are too numerous to mention once again on this show. Kathleen Kennedy started off by revealing that the next slate of films would not be a part of a new saga, but taking place across various timelines. The earliest, which will be helmed by James Mangold, whose movie will focus on the first Jedi and origins of the Force. Mangold didn't reveal much regarding his movie, but did share that it's set 25,000 years ago and described it as biblical. Now, there's some non-canon material out there as it relates to the beginnings of the Jedi, and it's very stripped down in terms of its technology. So the James Mangold film being 25,000 years before everything else and being biblical really does sort of open up an opportunity here to strip down Star Wars to its essence and the Force with very little technology. So I'm I'm curious more than anticipatory to this film. I like my Star Wars with my spaceships and my lightsabers. I'm not sure how I feel about a biblical version of that compared to, let's say, today's technology. That being said, I'm open to it and curious about it. The symbol they used, interestingly enough, on the timeline was the symbol that was on Octo in The Last Jedi, and so one can assume that perhaps Octo will actually play into the film, which I think would be an incredibly smart move. Next up was Dave Filoni, whose film will act as a crossover event of the various television series he's executive produced over the last few years, including The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and The Book of Boba Fett. Little details were added, but it'll follow the battle between the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant. So my understanding of what Dave Filoni is doing, just based off of what's been said in the past, previous comments from Kathleen Kennedy during other events, is that all these live-action shows that are taking place in this era post-Return of the Jedi would culminate into one big event. I feel like that's what this is turning into. We know that Thrawn is in the Ahsoka series based off of the trailer, and I have some more details of that if you hang out for the spoiler section of the show. We also know that there is this sort of building up of various factions and forces that I talked about earlier this week on the episode. And I think that this might actually be setting sort of a blueprint for what they're doing with the films, but working in reverse order. So my expectation is we're going to see this Return of Thrawn, the Seventh Fleet, a combination of Thrawn along with potentially pirates. In the Skeleton Crew trailer, and I failed to mention this before when we were talking about it, in the Skeleton Crew trailer, it did show the pirate that Greef Karga and Din Djarin ran into in the first episode of The Mandalorian. The only one that he let live, and the one that got away in the latter episode when they ended up taking down the main pirate's ship over Navarro. There was speculation that the pirates were going to play into it. He did show up in that trailer. So I imagine that what we'll see in Filoni's film will be something akin to what we saw in the original trilogy, facing off against an empire, but it's going to be more of a cobbled together enemy that will be led by Thrawn, which will ultimately reveal and bring about what becomes of the First Order, which is what I'm most excited about, is that possibility of filling in some of those gaps and giving us the backstory on how the First Order came into existence and how they've been, where they were hiding off in the unknown region. So I'm definitely excited for Filoni's movie. Then we have the one that I am most excited about. And while they didn't officially say it in terms of the title, essentially it's Star Wars Episode 10.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
Now, I'll say up front, if I were going to place money when they begin to roll this out and we get an official title for it, I doubt that the Episode 10 title will be attached to it. But Episode 7 wasn't necessarily attached to The Force Awakens, neither was 8 to The Last Jedi. They were promoted as such, but in terms of the official artwork that we got, the numbers were not on those films. As a matter of fact, I've been looking at a poster of The Force Awakens, and the number isn't on there. This is Episode 10, and it is the smartest move for them to do moving forward. It'll have been 6 years, if this comes out in 2025, as is speculated, 6 years since The Rise of Skywalker. It's going to feature as its lead Daisy Ridley and a new Jedi Academy. It's Episode 10. Lastly, according to Bespin Bulletin, we have the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy movie. It will take place 15 years after the events of The Rise of Skywalker and will focus on Daisy Ridley's Rey forging a new Jedi Academy. Daisy Ridley herself took to the stage to fans' delight, but unfortunately did not share any additional details regarding the project. Empire Magazine tweeted out, Daisy Ridley is officially returning for Rey in a Star Wars film set 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker. She's the Jedi rebuilding the Jedi Order in the aftermath of the sequel trilogy. So none of the films had a release date confirmed, despite Lucasfilm reserving 2 dates, December 25th and 27th. The Charmin Obaid Chinoy, the movie that I'm discussing right now, has long been rumored to be taking the 2025 date, but there's no mention of it here. So this has me really excited. I love Rey as a character. She is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. This is what I wanted to see in terms of the next film. We're going to be focusing on Jedi, and my guess is going to be that she's going to have some difficulty in building a new Jedi Order with probably one of the Padawans within the Jedi. The dark side is going to return, and my guess is they're going to set this up as a one-off film, and if it is successful and people like it, then we will continue to see 10, 11, 12 moving forward. That's the biggest cash cow for Disney, is to continue with the story that's been told. It does push back on what Kathleen Kennedy said in terms of we're done with the Skywalker saga. It will be, I'm curious to see whether or not she retains the Rey Skywalker or if she just goes by Rey. That remains to be seen, or if they end up retconning it. But I'm excited for all of these projects, but particularly the Dave Filoni and obviously this Daisy Ridley Rey movie, because it will really go, in my opinion, and help to bolster the sequel trilogy, which I love. And, fans are fickle, and they're also very predictable. We tend to hate the newest thing, and then once a new thing comes out, you like the thing that came out before it, and I fully expect that to happen with the sequel trilogy as well. It also sounds like there could be some interconnectivity happening between these three films in a sort of way. When you consider where they're posted in the timeline pre the sequel trilogy, which can provide some direct connections going into Rey's film post The Rise of Skywalker. But if Rey's training new Jedi she learned from Luke, we know that she has the Jedi books from The Last Jedi, which could certainly play into this. It seems only obvious, which again provides that connectivity to The Last Jedi. Those could go all the way back to the James Mangold movie set 25,000 years before, especially with the ancient Jedi texts being written and those being the only documents that we've ever seen in book form in Star Wars. There also seems to be positioning taking place, like with what's happening with Andor and Rogue One and Dave Filoni's film and the live-action shows, where, considering this is 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker, that provides a good chunk of time to create live-action or animation leading into that film, much in the same way of what they've been doing with the live-action shows that we've seen so far, leading into Dave Filoni's movie, and then going to the era pre the original trilogy, and of course the abundance of content that we've had there with 2 movies, Rogue One and Solo, both leading into the original trilogy, and of course the animation and also live-action shows in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Clone Wars, The Bad Batch within that as well. So I imagine that Disney and specifically Lucasfilm plans on continuing to build the live-action content for the streaming platform around these films that are being made. What do you think? Are you excited about any of this? Are you excited about all of it? TalkShowNerd at gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube. So now, before I let you go, and I'll do listener feedback on next week's episode, I do have some leaks to share with you, official leaks. So if you don't want to be spoiled for next week's Mando episode, bail now, and thank you for listening.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
From thedirect.com, new footage of the upcoming 7th episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian was revealed exclusively during Lucasfilm's Friday panel at Star Wars Celebration. The first 7 minutes of Chapter 23 featured lots of striking details, including multiple mentions of fan-favorite villain Thrawn. The opening of the episode saw Elia Kane on Coruscant receiving a hologram from Moff Gideon. Kane tells Moff how the pirates, seen earlier in the season, were thwarted by Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and the rest of the Mandalorian. Cutting to Gideon, he hangs up and proceeds down a corridor, walking past a number of stormtroopers that closely resembled the Phase 2 clone troopers from the prequel trilogy. While doing this, the audience glimpses what look to be vats and tubes similar to those seen in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. From here, this is alluding to the cloning. Esposito's Star Wars Big Bad arrives in what was called the Shadow Council, a series of holograms from Imperial warlords. The father of General Hux from the sequel trilogy and Grand Admiral Thrawn's second-in-command, Pelion, are among the group. Gideon opens the conversation by criticizing them for waiting on Thrawn's grand plan. The Chiss admiral is noticeably absent, and they seem to be waiting for him to get started. Gideon says that Hux's father has been focused on cloning work and notes that they have to deal with the Mandalorians. Moff requests 3 Praetorian guards, TIE bombers, and TIE interceptors before a whole group chants, "Long live the Empire." I've been hearing speculation, too, of Snoke coming into play at some point. I'm desperate for it to happen, and I hope that it does. I'm going to leave you with that and head into my weekend. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode and you're as excited as I am about the news that was revealed at Star Wars Celebration. As always, if you want to support My Nerd World, I hope that you will go and pick up your preferred copy of the EMBARK science fiction series. Follow a ragtag squadron of pilots and one reluctant hero on a journey of survival from Earth to the far reaches of space as they fight for humanity's future among the stars. EMBARK is available in ebook, paperback, audiobook, hardcover as well. Great for ages 11 plus, but written for adults. If you like your science fiction space opera to be epic with a little bit of romance action, then EMBARK is perfect for you. Head on over to Amazon.com or go to mynerdworld.net. If you go to Amazon, search for EMBARK and Jon, Jon Justice, and you can pick up your copy. Ebook for EMBARK Book 1, only 99 cents. How sweet is that? Have yourself a fantastic weekend. I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, you are safe, and I look forward to hearing from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Talk to you next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.